So here's the John K. Hutchinson semi-official website. Apparently his website's been compromised several times. But let's get into a little bit of his history here. It's pretty fascinating what we're going to find. John's life and experiments has changed drastically in 1979 when, upon starting up an array of high voltage equipment, he felt something hit his shoulder. He threw the piece of metal back to where it seemed to have originated and flew up and hit him again. This is how he originally discovered fundamental frequencies can shield, quote, gravity. When his Tesla coils, electrostatic generator, and other equipment created a complex electromagnetic field, heavy pieces of metal levitated and shot towards the ceiling, and some pieces shredded. Upon analysis and thorough investigation, the Canadian government dubbed this phenomenon the Hutchinson Effect. In the years from and after 1979, many members of the so-called and aptly named military-industrial complex visited his lab, corresponded with him in a variety of other respects, observed his work and his inventions. Remember this back in 1979. His work is classified as national security by the Canadian Security Intelligence. So the phenomenon. A commonly white outer layer of material forms. John has witnessed slow fusing metal together of rubber and steel samples, and he has witnessed effects on aluminum blocks, which have turned to dust. White powder has shot out and later settled on some of the samples. You can see photos and other videos of some of these samples from the links on this site. John has witnessed the tops of steel bars turn to dust and white powders as well as chrome plating being blown off. At various times since 1980, John has witnessed anomalous effects of foaming water in some experiments. Other samples of dissimilar materials such as wood and metal that have fused together during experiments. John has also witnessed dissimilar materials fusing together into globs in about 80% of the cases. The effects of lift and ballistic lifts, sometimes to an unknown height or movement to an unknown distance. We had reports from the tow truck driver saying found chunks of concrete in the roads. Chunks of concrete in the roads in Paradise. These little effects have been seen to occur with objects of only a few grams in weight to approximately 1,500 pounds. This has been in the case where the total energy input is set of test equipment has been between 75 watts and 4,000 watts, or 4 kilowatts at 110 volts, depending on the equipment and test being done. Many of his experiments have caused effects at a distance, such as levitation of objects and vibration of objects and other effects. In 1981, he witnessed a persistent white fog effect in some experiments, and this appeared in subsequent experiments in 1984 and 1985. In 1981, Philip DEW of Brewster, New York, owner of Hippotronics Company, along with his secretary, witnessed steel turn into dust, and they handled the samples. Also in 1981, George Hathaway and Alex Pizarro caught some of these events on 8mm film. IBM engineers visited him and observed his experiments. Washington State Group also visited and observed. Members of an organization called the San Diego Laser Group. The San Diego Laser Group visited him in 1981 and saw the results of his experiments. Why is the Laser Group talking to John Hutchinson? In 1983, a group of Los Alamos laboratories contacted him on behalf of the U.S. government. During experiments performed with the Los Alamos team, large effects took place outside the target areas such as mirrors breaking, fires starting, and there were unusual effects with lights and other things. Why do you think they're turning off the power ahead of time, folks? In the period between 1983 and 84, John worked with Pharos Technologies' INSCOM team, which included General Albert Stubblebind, Major Ed Dames, Dave Porter, and others who were based in Washington, D.C. General Albert Stubbeline. Huh? In 1985, John completed 2 days of controlled experiments for Colonel John Alexander, who was representing interest in Washington, D.C. Video recordings were made at the time, but the report produced was not classified. Also in 1985, John gave demonstrations for George Hawk of McDonnell Douglas, industrial military complex aerospace firm. John witnessed some metal samples giving off gray mist during some of the experiments. Alex Brazzero was present for the experiments. Daniel Bottomley was present for others. In these tests, we witnessed molten yet cold metals, and we saw samples bend into weird shapes on some occasions. Whole samples disappeared and then reappeared. Around the time, a University of British Columbia professor also attended one of the demonstrations, but left in an utter state of confusion and disbelief. Mr. Dennis Edmondson of NASA discovered the possibility of obtaining $5 million in research funding made available by NASA and Boeing. Also in 1985, a TV crew filmed experiments for the NewsHour, and they witnessed mid-air aurora-type effects. Richard Sparks was his agent for small business innovation research for the U.S. Department of Defense. His privacy coordinator for the CIA, that was John M. Wright. These are his handlers. Also, Colonel Rogers was involved in trying to help retrieve documents concerning his work. In 1986, by orders of Eric Nielsen, Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, the Canadian D&D Director of Scientific Technological Intelligence, came to his lab along with a Defense Region Establishment Pacifica to investigate his work. George Hathaway also assisted in these demonstrations and filmed the experiments using 5 different cameras. Again, 1986. Though he later stated none of these films or photographs came out. 1987, Boeing Aerospace provided $80,000 to him. 1987, George Lissacase made his own film of effects in the lab, including the levitation of 1,500-pound transformer and nails floating through walls. 1989, John had taken a trip to Germany to do some work at the Max Planck Institute. He planned to have equipment shipped over there, but during the time, the government officials took his lab equipment. 1999, a documentary featuring the Hutchinson Effect experiments aired in 80 countries. In 2005, Lama Lee, who lived quite close to him, reported to news crews about metal ornaments dissolving in her apartment near the time John had done experiments. Mayor Wright of Westminster visited his apartment because he said he got reports of concrete breaking or cracking and citizens being in distress, apparently following some of the experiments. Remember Nikola Tesla, when he did his experiments in Boulder, Colorado, shut off a town's power some 30-40 miles away when he started working on his Tesla coil and had to leave Colorado to Long Island. Between June 2004 and April 2005, John experienced a significant increase in inquiries from a number of organizations, such as NASA, the Pentagon, and from the SAIC. Some of them requested John send videos. 2006, a group from the National Geographic TV filmed odd vibrations and fires during this experiment. Also during that time, Nancy O'Donnell, a TV director, and others from Chinese TV filmed melting rubber and steel during these experiments. 2006, several other groups filmed effects on Red Bull cans and on a toy ship. These effects included lightning bolts and water foaming. Again in 2006, videos of experiments were shown to a 400 staff officers at the Pentagon, and it received a standing ovation. And here's all the documents confirming and documenting what has been stated above. So you can clearly see the Hutchinson effect, directed energy weapons, laser companies wanting to know, back from the 70s. So we're talking 40 years ago, they were learning of this type of technology that was used and has been used on the destruction of major areas in California.